Hi there, and welcome back to the J&J podcast, where Jack and I discuss the breaking news in American politics as well as the politics abroad. Welcome to episode 7. Today we're going to be talking about the midterms and student loan debt forgiveness, as well as maybe a couple other topics at the end. Jack, do you want to get us started on the midterms? Give us a little summary of what happened?
It's simple, okay? We went from red wave to red Mirage.
To blue wall.
The blue wall. We held steady. Biden held. So, as of right now, what day is it? Today is Monday. It is now a 50-49 Senate with Democrats winning. And Georgia headed to a runoff because they didn't make it to 50%. So there'll be elections in like December 6th or something where Warnock will go against Herschel Walker. We'll see how that goes. But the Senate is decontrolled. And the House is going to be controlled by Republicans. As of right now, though, it's only 203 Democrats to 212 Republicans or something. But it'll probably be something like 219 Republicans to 206 Democrats.
Which
so we'll have a
is,
very slim majority.
And what are the implications of that?
Oh, we're gonna get into that. Don't you worry.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
I just wanted a couple more things. Dems flipped a couple state governments, which is something like that they don't do. Normally, Republicans are the state government people. They focus on
State Senate.
And exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, multiple trifectas. So congratulations, Biden.
That's also pretty big because you're seeing a lot of, I mean, obviously this happens with everything, but a big thing that's starting to get more popularized is trans rights and how they're being taken away and things like state Senate. So that's a big win for Democrats.
And that's where as not sexy as state and House Senates are, it's very, very important for policy. So some would even argue more important than senators and that kind of stuff because it's what's actually happening at the local level.
Yeah, I think I kind of wanted to break my thoughts down into a winners and losers category.
Yeah.
So here are my three winners. Progressives, I think, are a winner. They're showing they've been winning a lot in the local elections. So the progressive strategy has been to go for city councils and house seats and things like that. And every single election cycle, they just pick up a bunch of seats. But they also won with Fetterman. Fetterman is a progressive, and he beat Oz. And then you've got the New Hampshire senator too. She's not a progressive, but she's pretty progressive, and she won as well. We also have a big breakthrough with the first Gen Z candidate winning.
Truth.
So we have the first Gen Z guy in there, and he's a progressive from Florida. He managed to survive there was a red wave, and it was in Florida, but he managed to survive that.
And some would say in New York. So that's something, not to be super partisan here. Republicans did win very, very big in Florida, very, very big.
Yeah,
it was unexpected. And they took away the Democratic supermajority in the New York House. And this was also unexpected. I would have never expected, and I think it was pretty unexpected in general, that New York would turn red, or at least more red than it was before, right? So congratulations to them on that. They also did beat Stacey Abrams and Beto in Georgia and Texas, respectively. So it wasn't a total loss, but compared to what was expected, again, the red wave, it was bad. It was a bad showing.
Exactly. And I think, here, I'll just keep going quickly. I think another winners I had were just regular liberals, straight down the line, kind of people like Mark Kelly, Catherine Cortez, Warnock. Though Warnock hasn't won, but he did a lot better than, just like a lot of other candidates, did a lot better than I kind of expected him to. I kind of expected Herschel Walker to walk away with the victory. So it's not just progressives. We're also liberals won as well, regular liberals. And the other big winner I have was DeSantis. This is huge for his future presidential run. He got a lot of spotlight from Trump calling him out. Trump went on his little newsletter that he does, saying, DeSantis has betrayed me and he sucks, and he was going to his rallies and saying Ron DeSanctimonious. And
gave him a nickname. Yeah, now we know what it is, finally.
But that actually, we've seen that this is good because he's riling Trump up, which is Trump is scared of him. And it also shows, we've seen a lot of reaction from, Republicans, and they don't like that Trump is going after him. They like DeSantis. They're backing him up. They like how he goes about policy. He really has been buying into the culture wars. And that's actually something else I wanted to talk about. So,
and just interrupting you, another big winner, democracy. Democracy.
Yeah, according to the Democrats, is that is
also
somewhat true.
No election deniers who were running for state attorney generals, which are the ones who conduct, voting and all that stuff, won.
Yeah, exactly.
Boom. Thank
there was
God, democracy.
for running for which one?
Attorney General, state.
Oh
Attorney
yeah,
General.
because there was definitely some election deniers who did win their elections.
Yes, yeah.
But they lost a lot more than they were expected to.
And not only that, I don't know. There might be one or two that I'm missing. I haven't heard of many high-profile candidates, Republican or Democrat, denying that they lost. I think they have all conceded, or if not, maybe they haven't conceded yet, but they haven't come out saying the vote, apart from Trump, who have said voting is...
Carrie Lakes from Arizona, she hasn't lost yet.
Yeah,
but she was losing, and also I think Arizona is where there was some issues with the ballots or something. Maybe that was Nevada. I don't really remember.
I think that was Arizona, where they ran out of paper.
And she was saying, this is why I'm losing the race.
Okay,
but we'll
close.
see her reaction. People are actually saying she should be VP for Trump. So she's actually got a lot of spotlight. Even if she loses, she might come away as a winner. But I think this kind of brings me into my big losers. So I think the big loser is Trump/Trumpism.
Yes.
So Trump is a big time loser. A lot of the people that he supported lost. People like Blake Masters, Blake Masters was putting out ads saying the leftists want our people to not exist. And when I hear our people, I kind of think, who's he talking about? It's a little weird. And then you've got Carrie Lake and Bo Hines, who are just huge Trump people who all lost it's likely Carrie Lake is going to lose her election. Dr. Oz, he ran off just being endorsed by Trump, especially in the primaries. So that's just showing that Trumpism is not nearly as popular as it was 4 years ago.
No.
Or maybe it's just not as maybe it's just, it's pushing neutrals and independents to really go out and vote. But I think, this is kind of showing that Trumpism was a big loser in this election. And I think the other big loser, actually, maybe not a big loser, but you and I can talk about this. I think a little bit of a loser was Biden, because although Democrats won big time, I don't know if that was necessarily a reflection about how they feel about Biden, because they were doing a lot of exit polls, and around 2/3 of 2/3 of voters don't want Biden to run again. So I don't know if that makes Biden a loser, but it definitely shows that while Democrats won, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's a referendum on Biden, that it means that they would like Biden, or they necessarily even like their current situation. And that I don't want to keep going on, so interrupt me whenever you want.
Yeah,
but
I'll interrupt you there. Actually,
you
I agree. I wonder how much... So if I'm a Democrat and I'm thinking of voting, I might not want to vote because I like Biden, but I will vote because of abortion, or because, I'm hearing Republicans say things. Probably, I think abortion was a very big deal for this one. So I don't know if that's what put them out to vote. I do think Biden is I wouldn't put him in the losers category at all, just because this doesn't so to put this in context, because I think people don't realize how big of a deal this is. Normally in a midterm like this, the party that is in power loses somewhere like 30 or to 40 seats. It's crazy. And here they lost, what is it, 10 maybe?
Yeah, this is the best performance for an administration in 40 years.
In decades. Yeah. So I would give him some credit for that.
That's true. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like the people, he is doing good legislation. I think his legislation is positive, and I think that's having positive effects. I just don't think voters aren't super well informed, and so I don't know if they necessarily connect Biden to certain things.
That's something else that we've talked about before, how well informed are voters. And you sent me this video yesterday, a couple of days ago, of a focus group of people our age, young people.
Ran by Pod Save America, the guy from Pod Save America.
And they got them, and they were like, okay, what are the big issues? What did they ask? What are the big issues you're going to vote about?
They asked...
Who's your state senator? They asked all these questions.
They didn't even... They just said, who's your rep?
Yeah.
They said, are you voting in the midterms? And I think one person said yes, and one girl said, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
And these were, by the way, all people who voted for Biden last election. So there is an interesting thing, but something that actually has come out. So while that video shows that young people are a huge thing for Democrats to get a hold of, and maybe they're not tapping into it just well enough, they did do a good job this election at getting young people to go out and vote. It's partially what won them a lot of seats. And I think that's also just because of abortion. I think you have a lot of probably young people who all they know is abortion being a normal thing. And so, I mean, that's most of Americans, but also just especially young people. And so for that to be, threat of that being taken away from them, it's just going to motivate them to go out and vote. And I think young people have really resonated with them.
I agree. What the point I was trying to make is I'm surprised. And I know we're nerds, right? Yeah. We're nerds about this. We follow it. We read. We're very nerdy about politics. But I would expect the average American to know I mean, something. They didn't know
Yeah.
anything. I was very, very, very much surprised by that.
I mean, yeah, we asked the questions to our friends who aren't really politically interested, and then we get similar responses.
I
They
like
don't know who
I
Trump
don't
is.
believe it in my head. I'm in an echo chamber because I really think people know, obviously not as much as someone like us do, but know more than they do. So
Yeah.
that's definitely surprising to me. I also want to talk about Trump again. I want to go back to him. Is he done? Is it over?
I think so. I think he is done. This election really showed people don't want radical right. People don't want Trump-esque politics. People don't want election deniers. And I think with the surge of DeSantis, I think DeSantis and Trump go on the debate stage, and Trump looks like a big baby next to him. Like he's going to be screaming, and I think DeSantis will come off a lot better. But obviously, it's far in the future. But I think DeSantis will edge out a victory over Trump.
But let me tell you something else. This has been said before, right? 2016, Trump was never going to win. He's, again, too much of a big baby.
Yeah.
He's different. He's not who he says he is, all these things. And he lived.
And I mean,
look
at what just happened here. I mean, we all said Republicans were going to take both the House and the House by a lot and the Senate by a decent amount, and Democrats won. Politics is unpredictable. I do agree. If Trump is he is good at communicating and messaging things, but I think he needs to switch it up. And if he does do that, I think he gets a better chance. But I think if he runs off what he's been doing for the past couple of years, I don't think it works. I don't think people want that right now.
I agree, and I will say even his own people are turning against him. The New York Post, which is right leaning, the cover of it was like, Trumpty Dumpty, he fell off the wall, he's done. Fox News was talking about it. Everyone.
They're all turning on him. Fox and Friends.
Exactly.
Everything.
Who you would say, or at least I would say, very much support him, or at least are on his side most of the time, are turning on him. And this isn't like a coincidence.
Yeah.
This is a top-down thing that's like, okay, maybe Trump is done. Let's change horses.
And who do you think is? So I think these are my predictions. I think DeSantis, Trump, Pence, Liz Cheney, and then a couple other people. I was wondering if you had any other guesses.
Probably
we'll be
something
running.
like that. But if I'm honest, it's Trump or DeSantis.
The
rest don't matter at all.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
Kanye who runs, it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter.
Oh, yeah. Kanye might run. That's true.
I did want to say I saw this quote somewhere and I thought it was funny and very much true. It was something like this election was, it was unexpected. The only constant in this election was that if Trump supported you, you would lose.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a Republican pundit saying that. And I was very surprised by that. I was like, and this has been true. So, I don't know. That'll be interesting to see. He announces tomorrow, supposedly.
Okay,
if he runs for, he will.
Yeah.
But he announced.
I always thought it was going to be a Trump Jr. who ran this election, but I was wrong.
God.
But here's the last thing I kind of I had to add to it. I just actually two things. One, I wanted to have a callback to our interview with Ronan.
Okay.
Ronan said Republicans are the masters of losing. He said that.
Yeah.
And I maybe he was right in this election. I thought that was I just remembered him.
Sorry, one more interruption there. With going back to Trump because the losers made me think of it. This is an article I read which I very much agree with. Trump ran on being a winner. So a winner on business, a winner on the free people, anti-establishment, where I'm going to win. The trade deal was bad. I'm going to win. Everything was about winning. He is a winner. That is what he ran on. And no offense, but this election showed that he was a loser.
Yeah.
And I wonder if at the end of the day, Republicans, after everything that's happened that I would think, okay, January 6th or this policy or the tax cuts or whatever you want to say should have been enough for some people to kind of shy away from Trump.
Yeah.
I wonder if the nail on his coffin is that people see him as a loser now.
Yeah.
So I would be very...
and he's a sore loser too, and a sore loser always comes across more of a loser because he all he keeps talking about is how he lost.
Yeah.
So anyways,
well, to be fair, he doesn't blame it on himself though.
But he keeps talking. I mean, you're right.
We'll see. That'll be very interesting.
I think you asked me the other day, and I want to get to something else after. But you asked me something. The other day about what does DeSantis go after Trump for, because they might have similar policy or whatever. I think one thing, kind of obvious thing, is you could say the way you conduct yourself is gross, but I don't know if that's actually super useful for people who want to vote for Trump.
I don't think that worked in 2016.
I think a big thing he should go for against Trump is how he ran on draining the swamp, anti-establishment. Republicans like this. I think most people in general like this. And Trump didn't do that. He elected people, or he nominated people who have been living in D.C., career politicians, people who've lived in D.C. their whole life. Trump did not drain the swamp, and I think that's what DeSantis should go after him for.
Yeah,
but I also think here's another thing. So going into the election, Katie Porter said, yes, Democrats right now, or our government is struggling with inflation and a bad economy. and she said all Republicans are doing is saying our economy sucks, and they're not really proposing anything. And she said that's not a policy. Republicans coming up and saying our economy sucks is not a policy, and that will hurt them. She said that, and she was right. It did hurt them, and that makes me think. Although we talk about uninformed voters, the fact that Republicans, yes, they can say, oh, things suck, but if they're not coming to voters with any sort of policy, which there was a lot of, I've been noticing the last 10 years, lack of policy substance in politicians.
Even
it doesn't
throw
work.
him under the bus, Fetterman himself.
Yep.
And Oz, really. I don't really...
yes.
There's not policy. It's a lot of... And I would argue this is...
I mean, Fetterman ran off, hey, look at this guy. That was his whole thing. Look at this idiot from New Jersey. And it worked for him, but I don't know how substantial.
Barely worked.
Barely worked for him,
And I think this is a Trump thing. I wouldn't say this is a 10-year thing. I would argue... I mean, you've seen the Obama-Romney debates or all these debates. Yes. They do talk about policy
all the
and
time.
how much it'll cost.
McCain versus Obama makes me sad that we don't like that anymore.
I remember it was like Front News. It was like, Obama makes this claim and says it costs X dollars, but actually it costs X dollars.
I know, yeah.
I have no idea how much anything costs anymore. No one cares. No one talks about it. So all of these things, I think it's a Trumpism thing.
Yep.
But I think it's here to stay.
I agree with that. I think although Trump might not be popular anymore, there are elements of Trumpism that are going to forever change the way we engage with politics. That's just a fact. Yeah. But anyways, yeah.
Another, I would say, losers, if you want to look at it like this, is Democrats with Latino voters.
In Florida, for sure.
In everywhere. In California. In
Texas, they did well.
In Texas, they did well. In the aggregate, Latino voters moved from Biden to either not vote or Republicans about 18%. That's a huge
in California,
huge
they're still around I think it's 72% of the vote.
Yeah, but
right?
it
used to be more.
It used to be 90 then, if those are the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure. I think a lot of it is coming from. This is what I've always known. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but there might be fluctuations in places like Texas and California, other states, Arizona. But Florida has been a huge one that Republicans have been targeting since Trump came in because of Cuban Hispanics. Yeah. So because Cuban Hispanics have a terrible association with socialism, and so it's very easy for Trump to come out and say Biden's a socialist. AOC is a socialist, whatever. And then Cubans who maybe had really bad experiences with socialism or maybe didn't even experience it, but they fled because they had to flee. And they hate that. And so that makes them want to vote for Trump. And they also might maybe just like the way Trump carries himself.
I agree. I think Cubans in particular are also, and Latinos in general, family values, religion, the culture wars work with Latino who want, transgender. What is that? It works with them. It does.
Absolutely.
But I think Democrats in general need to stop looking at Latinos as one group. They need to start looking at it like they do white people. It's multiple groups depending on age, depending on location, all these things.
Absolutely. So that's a great point. I think because Biden, I mean, Democrats, obviously, I mean, they've accidentally said it too. Like Biden saying, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black.
That was African American.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just going to say, because they view black as a conglomerate. They just say black voters all vote the same way. And that's not necessarily true, but there is truth to it that black people overwhelmingly vote Democrat across the board. Yeah. But yes, you are exactly right. With Latino people, older Latinos vote Republican, or not. Younger, they might not all vote Republican, whereas younger. Oh no, it is true that younger Hispanics, especially in Texas, has been huge for them. Vote progressive actually. Yeah. So it is, and it's just like with white people, they do. So I agree. That's a good point. And I think that those are all my comments on midterms.
What do you think about this? So right now it's 50. So the Senate is now Democratic. We're waiting a month to vote in Georgia, right? Yeah. So it might be 51-49, or it could end up being 50-50. Yeah. Why should people now vote for Warnock when? So this is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that's a great question.
I'm a Democrat in Georgia, right? I already went and voted for Warnock, and he might have not won. It's gonna go to runoff, but at least we as Democrats have the Senate. So let me not vote anymore. We have the Senate. Let's go. It's game over.
That's a great question. I think, this one is a little less convincing to a voter, but in the long term, that seat in 5 years will help a lot because maybe in 2 years when somebody else loses a seat and then that seat, the fact that Warnock won pays off really well. Yeah. But people, I don't know if are as long term as that. I think a big one is you look at people like Manchin or Sinema, and sometimes just one of them can make a huge piece of legislation drastically, quote unquote, worse for a Democrat from a Democrat's point of view. And while that maybe is understandable, I know you like to say that with Manchin he has to be like that. That doesn't really matter. All that matters is that Warnock being in there, we can just have it so that Manchin votes no and Warnock can go in there and vote yes, and then boom. And so I think that would be the big selling point. The issue with that is then Biden and whatever they might have to go in there and they might have to demonize people in their own party. Like Manchin, because they're gonna have to go in there and say Joe Manchin sucks, and because of that you have to go vote for Raphael Warnock.
And let me say something. Oh, you mean as to bring them out into the party? I think Manchin's even cool with that. I don't know if you remember up to the a month ago
he doesn't care. He doesn't give
a month or two. He actually offered. He was like, what did he say? Someone who was running in a more progressive area. Manchin went actually and was like, do you need me to be on your side or do you want to kind of shit on me? I'm cool doing whichever one you want. It was like caught on mic. He was like, do you want to demonize me? Do you want me to act? Yeah. You know, it was funny. He was like, I'll do whatever you want, just like win. So I do think that'll be interesting. I also want to say, because the Cinnamon Manchin point is a good point, and this was a great take I read the other day. Manchin probably even wants Warnock to win.
Yeah,
I would have thought, well, does he? Because Manchin has a lot of power if it's in a 50-50. He is the deciding vote in a lot of things, so he can get a lot of things he wants. But him being in a, I think, 30 or 40 plus Republican seat, it's insane that he's a Democrat there.
Yeah.
He can say no to a lot more Democrat things if he knows it's going to pass anyway because Warnock's in there. So in a 51-49, he's not the deciding vote anymore, so it'll pass, let's say. Yeah. So he can say no to things that he might have said yes before because it was so important for the country or whatever, but it hurts his seat. And everyone is expecting him to lose, again, because it's a plus 40 bar. So if he's able to move more to the right, that can actually help him win his seat, and it'll have no impact on Democrats' agenda.
That is true. Anyway. I also think, though, you kind of brought this up. I think on the flip side of that, he does lose a lot of power, and so it might hurt him in trying to redirect certain things to where is he from? West Virginia. Yeah. So that is true. I don't know.
We'll see. It'll be interesting to see.
But yeah. Anyways.
Also, this is something committees also Senate committees are, if it's a 50-50. They're split. So Republicans can boycott, or they can do things to take up more time and all of these things, which they have done before, and they have done these last 2 years. If it's a 51-49 with Democrats leaning, then that doesn't happen, right? So things can move faster. Democrats can get what they want in there quicker. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Anyways, do you want to add anything else, or do you want to move on to the
one last thing, because I do want to touch on one place that went very, very bad for Democrats, and this was New York.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah.
They lost a lot of state House and state Senate seats, and why this happened was very interesting, actually. So a while ago, when they were redrawing the maps for gerrymandering or voting, Democrats gerrymandered it perfectly. It was called like the best gerrymander I've ever seen. Was one of the pundits. He said that. So it helped Democrats immensely. It was very, very one-sided towards Democrats. Yeah. And then Republicans sued, and a judge said this is too one-sided and gave it back to the Democrats to redraw it. And instead of redrawing it themselves, for some reason, they said, no, let's give it to a commission, like an independent kind of commission. Or actually, no, they gave it back to the judge, and the judge appointed someone else to do it, but they're supposed to be independent. And it obviously didn't work for them at all. So this is an interesting point where Democrats, they don't like gerrymandering. They think it's bad. That's not totally true. They do it in some parts to their advantage.
They Democrat voters might not like it, but Democrats love it because they have to do it.
But then in cases like this, where I would argue you should do it if you're playing this dirty gerrymandering.
Oh, no, of course. Yeah.
When it's given back to them, they're like, okay, let's give it to an independent commission. Like, okay, come on. And now you lost.
This
lost the House. Yeah. They lost House seats.
Yeah.
Democrats
could have the big House seats, which could have then helped them maybe even keep it.
Yes, they could have kept it.
Yeah. So that's a good point. That is surprising because that might be unique to those people, because I know that Democrats in other states would.
This
probably
happened
never
in Virginia as well. Same cycle where it was an independent commission, even though it didn't have to be, but they said, okay, for bipartisanship and because of all these.
Did you see in Florida? In Florida, they had this issue too. I think Republicans gerrymandered. Yeah. And I might be wrong here, so don't take my word for verbatim. but I'm from my understanding is Republicans gerrymandered in Florida, and then DeSantis, and then it was like rejected, or they put it back, and then DeSantis then did the gerrymandering himself.
Oh yeah, and he was sued to do it actually because he was waiting too long to do it, and then he ended up doing it.
Yeah, but he did his own gerrymandering, and it was apparently or something like that. His administration. And it was really good gerrymandering for the Republicans. Yeah. So that, and then interesting. So that Democrats aren't doing that. What do you think the reason for that would be?
That's an interesting.
Trying to set a good precedent that people shouldn't do that.
Yeah, and I think that's something Democrats do, which I think is like ethically good of them, but politically
stupid.
Yes, stupid for lack of a better word. Because sure, I would love if the districts were drawn nicely and competitive and always in a good and moral way, but that's not how it is. So you need to play the dirty game, and I think sometimes they don't play the dirty game.
Yeah. So moving on.
Let's do it.
There has been a huge political huge political upheaval everywhere. No, Joe Biden's student debt relief plan has been shot down in the U.S. District Court, as well as the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the circuit court of like the Midwest, like the Dakotas and the Iowas and stuff. And there has been, if you want to kind of go into what the actual stuff that's been going on, there has been.
Yeah. So firstly, what it actually is, I think this was passed in summer or something like, and by passed I mean Biden himself passed it. It wasn't through Congress or anything. And it was a $10,000 forgiveness for people earning under $125,000 a year.
Yeah.
For student loan forgiveness, right? So I'm a student, I need money, I go to basically the government and I say, give me money, and then I'm going to have to pay it back in 5-10 years or whenever. And then I'm stuck with a ton of debt afterwards. Everyone knows about this. It's a very big deal, right?
Yeah.
Biden doing this from basically one day to the next erased over 1/3 of all student debt. So student debt decreased by 33% with this. And he passed a lot of other smaller regulations, which I and other people would argue is actually bigger than this one-time, $10,000 forgiveness. Yeah. So things, I'm not going to go through all of them, but things like if you've been paying consistently for 20 years, then after 20 years, your debt is completely erased.
Yeah.
What you're supposed to pay monthly has been reduced from 10% of your income to 5%.
But I think that's only for, isn't that only for people who like work for the government, or is that people
yes, but that's everyone gets their, and by everyone I mean a number like 92%. Like everyone gets it from the government. Yeah.
No, I thought it was people who work for the government.
Oh, no. This is across the board.
Okay.
Yeah. What else has happened? It helps. This bill helps around 40 million Americans, and 26 million had already applied until yesterday or today, whenever the injunction happened. So now you can't do that. It's been placed on hold, and it's likely to go up to the Supreme Court. Their argument is basically, Biden can't do this. He can't just forgive, $10,000 for everyone who has student debt unilaterally. It has to be through congressional action or whatever. And I would argue if it ends up that the Supreme Court strikes it down and says, you're right, you're not allowed to do this, then this was a failure on Biden. I don't know why he would pass something that he knows would get struck down.
And the Supreme Court will likely shoot it down.
Yeah.
So I agree. I mean, on the one hand, it's like, should he have not just, he should have tried, because then at the same time, he would have received a lot of blowback if he didn't from people within his own party. Like, think about progressives who are always screaming at Biden saying, I want you to forgive all loans, let alone this. And then he tried his best.
I would argue what's worse, giving it to progressives, right? Giving them this and then getting it struck down and losing, you're taking the money back from the people you've forgiven it. I don't know how it's going to work.
Well, it's not like he's taking it. No, so from my understanding, he's not taking it back from them. It's just that they've applied to it. And then.
Yes. But I'm a student. I've applied and I'm like, okay, I've gotten rid of the $10,000, so now I can budget in a different way, right? Even though it hasn't happened, I'm expecting the future $10,000 to go away, and then all of a sudden Biden's like, "Oh, just kidding, that's not happening." I would be mad at Biden.
Well, yes, and it's not even. It's just like you expect. Yeah, exactly. You expect. So you don't have to pay loans in a month.
I would argue the progress if and this we're acting on the hypothetical that this ends up getting struck down, then I would say let the progressives keep crying about it, because this isn't how it is done, right? So do you yourself support student debt loan forgiveness?
So I would say yes. I think it helps I think it helps people. I think, like, I don't even think I need to do it. I can iterate maybe why. It relieves a lot of pressure on working class individuals because student debt, like loans, could be argued were predatory at the time. It hurts certain racial groups a lot harder, and it's like it alleviates a lot of financial burden on people. Boom. But then again, the drawbacks of it are one could argue it's good for the economy. I think I have it written down here. Like the Philadelphia Fed found that there's a negative relationship, obviously, between small businesses and student debt existing. So if you remove all student debt, then a lot of small businesses are going to thrive more, which makes sense. Also, it's argued that the GDP would go up a significant amount if you remove student debt, again, which is probably a positive effect. Right now, the effect on inflation would be pretty minor. But then if you resumed it next month, it would reduce inflation, on the other hand. But I think then again, the drawbacks are that it's kind of just like putting a Band-Aid on a bigger issue. And the bigger issue is hiked up tuitions. So I think the focus should be more on making college more affordable and debt-free, rather than doing student loan forgiveness. Because I think that this could just create hiked tuitions, right?
Yes,
and an abuse in the system. So, for example, people are going to take out loans because they think it's going to get, they think that their student debt is going to get forgiven in the future. Let's say it doesn't get forgiven in the future, and then they get screwed because they took out the debt thinking that it would. And then colleges will just raise their prices because they know that people can afford it because they've got student debt things. And I think it's important. Look, I'm not a person who has taken student debt or will ever have to experience that, so I'm just gonna kind of put that flag out there because I do think it's hard for me to really be able to like comment on that when I can't empathize fully with like the experience of being a young kid taking out a student debt and then being screwed for life. But yeah, what are your thoughts on it?
I think I'm kind of torn because it is a very big deal, right? It's 2/3 of students say that student loan debt is a very big problem, and more than like 6 in 10 or 7 in 10 say it's preventing them from having children and buying homes. It's a big deal. It's slowing people down. And I agree with everything you said. I'm just a little torn on like the cost benefit of it. If let me just for argument's sake take the argument that it's bad.
Yeah.
I would say one, it's inflation. It is inflationary. It wipes out the $400 billion from the Inflation Reduction Act that like in deficit, right? It completely wipes that out.
Yeah.
Because it'll cost $400 billion over I think 10 years or whatever. It's inflationary during a time when inflation is bad and it's going down, but inflation is very high.
Yeah, I mean the inflation it would be like 0.08%.
It's very very hard to calculate that, but regardless, the semantics of it being inflationary I think are bad because
I do.
But
so from a political marketing point of view,
yes,
so like DeSantis going out there and saying Biden is increasing our inflation,
and it is. He can't say it isn't. Yeah. He can say sure it's 0.0001%, but it is inflationary and people care about that.
And then also not doing it, right? Because the only big reason it's not inflationary right now is because because student loans aren't in effect. But if you let it resume, which it will in a month or a month and a half, then it would technically reduce inflation because then you have loans coming in. So I mean, to be fair, it is maybe it's not necessarily inflationary, but he's missing out on an opportunity to reduce inflation.
Yeah, that's why it's kind of compounded. It's kind of weird when you do the calculations. Something else is what you said. I think is a very good point. If it's a band-aid solution to a real issue, right? The issue is why are people forced to take loans? Why is tuition so expensive? Why is the government giving endowments to school and they're not using it for grants or scholarships or whatever? Yeah. So if I'm a school and I see that they're just wiping out $10,000, what's stopping me from increasing my tuition by $10,000? There's literally nothing stopping you. Yeah. And same for students, I think, suffer because of the same thing. I'm a student. I just took a $10,000 loan and it was just forgiven. Yeah. Why would I not take out another one next year knowing it's going to be forgiven? Yeah, and then you budget that into your budget. And when it ends up not being forgiven, you don't even have any money to pay it back because you spent it on a new car, on whatever you want. Yeah, right? And I think an issue Biden had with his proposal, and the reason why it's getting shot down a lot, is because it's a huge proposal, right? Like, what did you say? I think it gets rid of how much of the debt? $400 billion. Yeah, $400 billion, but it gets percent of what percentage? 33%. 33%. That is a huge amount of debt. I think so. While yes, I probably would support that. I think that there's a lot of.
I think in general it's maybe just a positive solution, but I'm not like huge on it, so I'm not like dreadful that it's over. I think the better thing to do it would be to maybe propose, if possible, a smaller version of the $10,000 student loan forgiveness. So to really just target people who are really, really low income, and then to go after making college more affordable, maybe checking private universities more on how much they can charge people, things like that. That's what I would be more in favor of, because I think then you're solving the problem, and then you're also, maybe with little amounts of student loan forgiveness, you're also alleviating the current pains of a lot of people, right? Because if you think about it, right, people who are like 50 years old now with student loans, they're not going to see the benefits of currently making college more affordable or currently doing that. So how can we help alleviate their problems as well? I think that
that's actually a great point. Because I was going to say, I think a lot of the provisions that I mentioned before, the kind of ones you never hear people talk about, are a bigger and better impact than the $10,000. And in my head, I would have thought, well, maybe he put the $10,000 in there to appease progressives, and not even progressives. Chuck Schumer isn't really that super progressive, and he's a champion of student loan forgiveness. And he tweets about it every day, and he says it every single time it comes up. So maybe to kind of appease that, he throws them a bone. There you go, $10,000, boom. Yeah. But at what cost? That cost might be the fact that it gets overturned, and then everything was for nothing, right? So I do wonder what will end up. I think
we should probably also clear up our opinions on the main argument that I hear, at least I've heard in my personal life, from people who are maybe a little bit more conservative on this issue.
Fairness.
Is that it's not fair. And you and I haven't discussed this at all. I think maybe because I personally, I just don't buy it that much. So I didn't talk about it because that's not the thing that gets me thinking. Yeah. But what do you think about the idea that, it's not fair to people who have paid off their loans already?
I would say they're right. It isn't fair, right?
Yeah.
And I struggle with this because you might be like, well, I don't really care about fairness. Or you might not say it, but that's kind of what you mean if you disagree with this argument, right?
Yeah, kind of.
Or you care less about fairness than you do about the impact that this will actually
I don't know
have
how.
on
I don't know how much I buy that it really is unfair.
Well, why?
Because I think that there's a lot of examples for these types of things. So let's say you have cancer, and then a cancer treatment comes out to help alleviate your cancer, and you had to get over your cancer the really hard way through a bunch of chemo, and now there's a new boom.
Well, but the difference is that.
Obviously this is a much different analogy, but I think at the end of the day, my point is, I don't think that we should allow people to live in lives of pain just because you had to do that as well. I empathize with your anger and frustration, but I think it's more unfair to just allow for everyone to have these issues than to just solve it as soon as we can.
I like that. I would agree with that. I think the more unfair part is good. Because when I say it's unfair, let's say you and I are starting college, and you take the $10,000, right? And you're like, boom, loan. And you and then in 10 years you're like, oh my God, I don't know why I took this. I'm in debt. My life is bad, whatever. And I'm sitting here reading the tax bracket and reading how it works and doing the math and with my little calculator. And I'm like, it'll suck, but I'm not going to take any loan and I'll pay for it myself and I'll work 2 jobs and whatever, right? And then that's it. I did my research. I know what I'm doing.
I see,
And then 10 years later, I'm fine because I don't have loans. And I see that you, who just sat, not to throw you under the bus, but you just sat there and you were like, hey, $10,000, let's go. You're getting it for free, really? After I've worked 3 jobs and I've put in all this effort and blood, sweat, and tears, and you're totally fine. You're now rent free and nothing's happened to you. Yeah. So I do understand that.
I do. I understand. I agree. I can empathize with that for sure.
So and I even would argue that's a good argument from them. I don't totally know. The only way I would be like, okay, I would agree with your argument. That's how I would rebut. I would say, yes, I applaud. Like that sucks. Or you know what? Maybe forgiveness it shouldn't be a thing. Maybe I would be okay with not forgiving from now on or something like that. Yeah. Because retroactively doing it is and does seem unfair. So maybe. How that's not. Then it wouldn't be. But then it wouldn't. It wouldn't be forgiveness. Then.
But then that defeats the whole purpose because then. Yeah. Well, then at what point? Because you're like, okay, from now on, anyone who does student loans was going to be forgiven. That's a bad idea.
No, that's a bad idea.
Because then it's really gonna cause the problems that we're talking about.
So then here's my new perspective on this.
We're hearing 4 different new opinions.
Well, I think I've cemented it now. I think student loan forgiveness, just like here's $10,000 basically, is bad. but the regulations and stuff that makes it easier to not be so deeply in debt is good. So I don't think I would support any kind of forgiveness, actually.
Why?
Because I think it's unfair and it doesn't actually tackle the issue.
Well, so have you switched your opinion on the? So you now are back to where you were on the opinion of fairness.
Yes, it is. And one more thing.
So then how would you respond to the argument that while, yes, I can empathize with the frustrations of people who have paid off their loans, I don't think that because they had to experience a bunch of pain to get their loans, everyone else should have to do that too.
Yeah, no, that's good too.
I think that's a fair take, and here's why.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Because that is kind of just like, in my mind, a given. Like, this is how almost like society works. So for example, right, if we implemented Medicare for all, I would be like very just like wowed if then somebody who just got treatment who paid like a bunch of money in deductibles and copays was like, oh my God, like we're doing Medicare for all. I just had to do all this. And now this person is just going to get their medical service for free. I don't know. I empathize with it. I understand like it sucks. It's terrible, shitty timing. But I don't think that like everyone for the rest of society should have to experience that pain, because this is how society progresses. Yes, my great grandfather had to do all these terrible things, and then my great grandfather had to only do this amount of terrible things. This is how it works, right? Like people have to do shitty things, and then it gets improved, and maybe it feels unfair and frustrating, but that's kind of almost how it is.
Yeah. Okay. Then maybe I need to think more about this one. I'm not totally sold on
that's
it
my
either
take.
way. Yeah.
I think so, but then that's just how I think. So I think, okay, that's almost a given. I don't buy the fairness argument, but I can understand actually maybe more of the economic problems of universities raising their prices, people taking out stupid loans because of this. They're not I think a good way to counteract that would be maybe investment in loan in finance education and stuff like that. But I agree with you that I think that the best part of this isn't the loan forgiveness, but it's the measures that he's added.
The little things that no one talks about, yeah.
And I don't know. I think Jack and I I think we want to do these big topics every now and then. So I think a good way to do it is, how can we make education more affordable or free? Or should we? That's probably something we talk about as well. Yeah, so maybe we can do that in a future episode.
Yeah, and we'll do the big topics and debate or talk about how we feel about them. One more thing for student loan debt forgiveness is, I wonder how do you feel about this idea that now that you have kind of done something for student loan forgiveness, does it kind of lose its steam? Yeah. Does it lose its steam? So then could you make the argument?
I don't know. I think this is too big to lose its steam. You're saying I see what you mean. Do I think that it loses its steam like politically? Yeah. I think too many people care about it for it to lose its steam. Yeah. Okay. This is big. Like people, the number one thing they care about is like money in their pocket, and this is a big thing for money in their pocket. So I think that I don't think this ever loses steam. This is a huge. This would make Biden, if he was able to get it through, so popular. It is such a popular thing.
Well, not in general. It's about 50-50. It's like 51% support it, 52% support it. It's 50-50.
I think it would really energize people. If you look at the
young people, they support it by a wide margin, but young people don't vote.
Here's a question I have. This is just more political. This is more what do you call it? Well, young people Gen Z is voting a lot more than previous generations. Yeah, but give us some credit.
They're voting. Give us some credit compared to
give us some credit over the millennials. We're so much better than the millennials. Yeah, barely. Anyways, no, significantly, dude. We are awesome. Anyways,
I'll be happy with Gen Z when they start voting like the 65.
Isn't it crazy how we're gonna have like a president who like was on TikTok, like
he's gonna do the dances or she?
Probably a she, dude.
Yeah.
Or anything.
Yeah.
Well, no. Anything. I don't know. I don't know if America will be that progressed to vote for somebody who's non-binary and
who knows? Who knows? Someday.
But anyways, I think that's all Jack and I have to offer on these subjects. Is that do you want to talk about anything else?
I thought you were gonna ask me something. You were gonna ask something, and then you kind of.
I forgot.
Okay, you forgot.
I forgot. But anyways, that is our podcast for today. We're gonna do a special episode. We'll tease that. We're not gonna tell you what it is quite yet.
Tease it.
But we're gonna do okay. Well, actually, we've got 2 special episodes on the horizons. I've gotten communications about a potential interview with a certain person and from a certain club. We've got interview, we've got debate debrief, maybe possibly.
That one we went to a debate here at Northeastern that was Republicans versus Democrats, and they talked about like 4 or 5 different things, and we wanted to kind of talk about how we think the debate went, just being in the room and, the way they conducted themselves and maybe what they said, and then actually talk about the 4 topics. I don't actually remember what the topics were. It was like gun rights and all of these different things, but I think it'll be good to talk about.
Yeah, and it looks like we're going to have an individual from that debate from the Northeastern Democrat Club on our podcast. Jack, just hearing about this now, but I'm getting lots of communication. I know I spoil. I'm too excited to tease it. I had to spoil it. So yeah. But that's all Jack and I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Spotify. Like everything, comment, engage everything. Follow our polls on Instagram. Jack and I have been having disagreements behind the scenes about whether we like the polls or not. I love the polls, so please engage with them. And thank you all for listening. See ya.